Hello and welcome to another podcast from Odelle Technology today. We're fortunate enough to be joined by the CEO and co-founder of Nordic Brain Tech, Catherine Hoek. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Catherine, I understand you are the CEO and co-founder of Nordic Brain Tech that develops a digital therapeutic for the treatment and prevention of neurological disorders, I think with a primary focus on migraine and chronic headache. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are today?
Sure. So I'm Catherine. Originally, I have a master's in chemical engineering and biotechnology, and I also have a master's in entrepreneurship, and that's where it all started. So back in 2019, I worked at the local tech transfer at NTNU, the university I come from in Norway. And I met a group of researchers who had developed a novel innovation in migraine treatment. At that time, it was actually for kids. And I had migraine as a child, and I have it once in a while now. So it was a very familiar topic to me. And together with the researchers, we decided to start Nordic Brain Tech to commercialize this innovation that they already had been studying for quite some years.
Okay, and tell me, how did the whole thing come about? I mean, to start a digital app at the scale you have is quite an achievement. Can you tell me something about the start of the company?
Yes. So we have two products in Nordic Brain Tech. One is the biofeedback therapy, and the other one is the migraine diary app. So the biofeedback therapy started as a research project, and then we, at the same time as we have developed that in clinical research, we have developed the e-diary.
Okay, so the flagship product is Brain Twin, is that correct?
Yes, that's the e-diary, which is on the market currently. And then we have Cerebri, the medical device for migraine prevention, in the pipeline.
Okay, so the flagship brain product, the Brain Twin, is a behavioral therapy, correct?
No, that's the biofeedback therapy with the
Okay,
sensor.
okay, could you tell me about the one you've got in your hand, please?
Yes. So Cerebri is a preventive treatment for migraine. It's developed as a medical device. It's building on biofeedback. And biofeedback is not new. It's already known in the literature. It's already included in guidelines for treatment of migraine prevention. But the problem we're solving is that it's very expensive today and limited in use because there are few biofeedback therapists out there, and it is frankly expensive. So what the researchers did was to look at biofeedback mechanism and how we can use this technology and bring it home to the patients and make it more available and more affordable to the majority of patients. So that's why we built Cerebri, which has two wireless sensors and a smartphone app. And the wireless sensors measures heart rate and temperature in the finger and muscle tension in the neck with an EMG sensor that you put on your trapezius muscle. And the measurements are sent to the phone screen, and you can see the measurements there, and you will be guided through a 10 minutes biofeedback session daily for 3 months. That was a lot of information, but that's the technology in a nutshell.
No, that's okay. Your team, okay, so my understanding is that in terms of clinical trials, you've got a number of clinical trials already underway and completed in Norway. Is that correct?
Yes, so since 2015, we have completed usability trials, feasibility trials, pilot trials, and at the end of 2024, we completed a big randomized control trial on nearly 290 patients that were randomized to either use biofeedback treatment at home or use an e-diary. And then we have very exciting results that were published at the European Headache Congress in December. And we're also having a paper underway.
Okay, so your collaboration with Pfizer in Finland is impressive. And in a world where pharma often see digital therapeutics as an add-on, how do you ensure Nordic Brain Tech is a strategic partner, not just a bolt-on tool for adherence and patient engagement?
Yes. So the partnership we have with Pfizer in Finland is with BrainTwin, and that's the e-diary. And the e-diary is used today by more than 60,000 people. And that's an important tool to keep track of medication usage, its adherence, but also give the individual control and more information and learn more about themselves.
Okay.
So that is a super interesting tool for pharma, I think, for patient education, especially, but also, of course, better adherence to medications. And then on top of that, we have the digital therapeutics component. There we don't have any partnerships yet, but I also think this is very interested in combination with medications, because in migraine treatment, you need to think a bit more holistic, both non-pharmacological and pharmacological. You have the preventive aspect and you have the acute treatment aspect. So I think there are exciting opportunities for the industry to collaborate in this space. And yeah.
So many digital therapeutic solutions rely on daily user input, which can be burdensome, I think, for some people. How have you designed Brain Twin to ensure it doesn't just gather data, but changes behavior, especially in the long term?
Yes, that's a good question. We have worked very closely with the usability aspects of our products and really understand the user's needs, behaviors, and how we can ensure that they can build lasting habits. But fundamentally, what's interesting with the migraine space is that there is a huge lack of treatment, and the patients really want to understand their individual patterns. And due to that desire to find a solution and understand what's going on, it's easier to track daily headache registrations. And because there's a huge need also for non-pharmacological interventions, we see that the interest is really big and the compliance has been very good in the clinical trials. So,
Okay,
uh,
okay,
yeah.
so speaking of clinical trials, in terms of clinical trials, are randomized controlled trials for you still the gold standard for solutions like yours? Or do you believe we're entering into an era where real-world evidence and adaptive trials will carry more weight for digital therapeutics approval and adoption than a randomized controlled trial?
I think it depends on the area, and in neurology and in migraine treatment, we have been using the guidelines as if it was a preventive medication almost. And I think that has been important for the key opinion leaders in the space and also the ones who have supported and followed the clinical trial and made the protocol, etc., for the credibility of the trial and the outcomes. But of course, moving on, now that we will launch this on the market, we will have a lot of real-world evidence, post-market surveillance data that we also need to report on. So I think that will be important for new claims and new indications, yeah, and extending the claim that we initially had.
Yes, indeed. So many digital therapeutic solutions who focus on symptom tracking or episodic management, I think that's where they are currently. You're leaning into prevention. And how do you convince skeptical clinicians or payers that behavioral interventions can actually reduce long-term migraine burden, the burden of migraine at a population level?
Yes. So the prevention we're doing is for the migraineurs who already have at least one migraine attack every week. So they are recommended already to use preventive interventions, and they would traditionally get a medication. So this could be an alternative to a medication, and there haven't been a lot of skepticism, I would say, more interest. And in Norway, we saw that 2,000 people submitted an interest to enter the clinical trial, and the trial was very popular and was completed at a very high
Yes.
speed. So I think people nowadays are more open to use technologies, and due to the large unmet medical need in migraine specifically, it's, I wouldn't say easier, but it's yeah, very positive patient population to work with.
Okay, so in terms of patient populations across Europe, France is piloting its PCAN program, and it's been going for a little while now. And they've got pathways for digital therapeutics, which are becoming interesting. Belgium has its validation pyramid. Germany has the DIGA scheme and a couple of other interesting schemes. But these systems, are these systems ready for behavioral neurology tool? Or are we still too early for serious market entry into most of Europe? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the programs might be ready in themselves, but the pathway to get there are still long because to enter the DIGA, we need the CE mark in place, and that's the big burden, you know, in terms of time and resources and investments needed. So
Yep.
for a small startup company with 7 employees, it's all about what comes first. And if it would have been easier to enter those programs earlier on without having the final CE mark in place in accordance with MDR, that would have been another story. And that's why we see a quicker entry point in the US, where you have the 510(k) exempt solution and or launch it as a wellness device to begin with in the US. That's also an option. And
Yes.
then work on the CE mark with more investments.
I think that's a great idea. I think in markets like Germany or France, where digital therapeutics are entering international reimbursement, I think that the lack of a CE mark, it's perceived to slow things down, but actually in dealing with many of the private insurance companies across Europe and a lot of the registries where I see a great opportunity for you, it's actually an advantage. I think that you're prioritizing your clinical trials and your real world evidence and your pilots, your academic validation, and that's part of that. That's a core part of your strategy. Would you agree?
Yes, indeed. And from the very beginning, when we started the company, it was all about the clinical validation.
Yeah.
That was the most important part from the very beginning. And being able to market it as a preventive treatment for migraine. And to be able to do that, we need the CE mark, the clinical validation, etc. And that's yeah, that's the reason why the physicians want to recommend the product as well, because it has the clinical evidence behind it, and they wouldn't be able to back it without. And it's important that it's the neurologists, the experts in migraine, the key opinion leaders, that it comes from them, and that the GPs and others in the primary healthcare sector can adopt it after they have made their recommendation.
I agree. So I think the US is a very, very viable market for you. Many digital therapeutic startups run pilot programs or partner with self-insured employers, health systems, or academic centers, even before an FDA is approved. I think you would fit into a wellness product under an FDA general wellness policy, would you?
Yes, we could.
Okay. And does that appeal to you?
Yes, but also the 510(k) exempt registration,
Yep.
which
Okay.
gives a bit broader medical claim.
I agree. You could partner with PBMs or employer-focused mental health programs. In the US, the CVS, the Express Scripts, and people like that.
Yes, definitely. And,
Okay.
you know, due to the high loss of productivity and sick leave
Yeah,
that migraine it has a high impact on employers.
I agree. And you would qualify for the de novo pathway in the US as well, which I think is extremely interesting for you. Catherine, you're looking for more pharma partners across Europe and the USA. Is that true?
Yes, we're looking for industry partners like pharmaceutical companies, big medtech companies, or consumer tech companies, and also early pilots in the US with the hospital systems, insurers, or employers, both for our e-diary, but also for the digital therapeutics.
So, Catherine, you mentioned a study during a conversation. Can you tell me a little bit more about the study?
Yes. So the randomized control trial showed that we met our primary endpoints, which we're very happy about, and a lot of interesting secondary and exploratory endpoints. And these will be published in an upcoming paper. Yeah.
Catherine, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I wish you all the very best of
Likewise.
luck in your future. And I think that you'll be amazingly successful. And I think what you've done is a game changer, an absolute game changer for such a young, intelligent woman. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much.